our community supporting family unification. I am joined by my ABA colleagues from the Center on Children and the Law, including our Center Director, Prudence Beller-Carr and Alex Cheney. I want to welcome you all to this space. Each June, the ABA Center on Children and the Law has celebrated Family Unification Month as a time to recognize the tireless efforts of parents and families working toward reunification, as well as those professionals who support them. Last year, we intentionally broadened our focus and recognized the month of June as Family Unification Month. Family unification is not a case outcome or a permanency goal. It is a collective responsibility to ensure families are supported and kept whole whenever possible. Unification is made possible through community. The neighbors, kin, faith leaders, educators, community service providers, and mentors, and all the other folks in our communities who stand alongside families and provide stability, guidance, and care. We call on all of our communities, our systems, and ourselves to do more to stand for family unification in action, investment, and support. With this call to action in mind, it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers for this afternoon's webinar. They represent the very best of communities supporting families. Yolanda Houston is the co-founder, executive director at Philly Voice, bringing extensive personal and professional experience in the child welfare system. A former kinship and adoptive parent, she has driven systemic change and addressed racial injustice within the sector. With an MBA and a background in business consulting since 2008, Yolanda has supported both for nonprofit and for-profit development, mergers, and acquisitions, all while advocating for family stabilization. She serves on several boards, including alongtheway.org and Dr. Dash and Friends, which support seniors and veterans. A Widener Law School graduate with 14 years of legal experience, Yolanda specializes in family law for the past 9 years. She has passionately represented parents and children in Philadelphia Family Court, championing interdisciplinary advocacy to promote family unity, stability, and trauma reduction. April Lee is the co-founder of Philly Voice and serves as director of programs. A dedicated community activist based in Philadelphia, she focuses on supporting families affected by substance use, the child welfare system, and the war on drugs. Her advocacy includes involvement with the Family Justice Law Clinic Advisory Board, the Philadelphia Coalition on Children and Opiates, the Governor's Act 2 Opiate Abuse Child Impact Task Force, and the National Advisory Board of Stop Overrepresenting Our People, which aims to reduce racial bias in mandated reporting involving Black and Indigenous families. April's life is rooted in service, mentoring women, feeding the homeless, facilitating life skills groups, and caring for her family, while also pursuing her passion for writing and performing poetry on stages across Philadelphia and beyond. I encourage you to sit back and enjoy the presentation that they will bring to us. I also will remind you that on this following Monday, September 16th, we will have an additional hour at 1 p.m. to dive deeper into the discussion that they will bring forward today. But with this, I'm going to turn this program over to our wonderful speakers, Yolanda and April.
Thanks, Beverly. Hi, everyone. Forgive my lighting. I'm not in my own office, so if you see how I look right now, just forgive the lighting. But I'm going to pass it over to Yolanda.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. As we begin this program today, we're going to start with the way we do it within our community organization and what we do with any meeting. We recognize where we are, understanding everywhere is not safe, but we always present to our communities a brave space. So this is our invitation to you to a brave space. Together, we will create a brave space because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We carry scars. We all have caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and more love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together, and we will work together on it side by side.
Thanks, sis. Which brings us to one, we'd like to thank the ABA for having us join the Way Forward series, especially surrounding community unification. I do want to kind of set some groundwork prior to us like really digging into our presentation. I was like a little bit surprised or not so much surprised when I was asked to do this. Just for some background, I am a parent who have been through the system, who have taken years for me to get my children back. And often reunification is looked at as success. I've been a part of a few different um, like reunification celebrations that some cities have, which one I absolutely appreciate. But then on the other side of that is heartbreaking. Oftentimes, we look at families that reunify as a success. I've heard it myself where people are like, well, you're successful, right? You have your children back. And I want to challenge us just to set that groundwork that we can't look at reunification without acknowledging the harms that the family had to go through, right? During one of the events that I went to, it was like, mom, children got taken due to domestic violence. And it spent so much time applauding the fact that this parent jumped through all of these unnecessary hoops, right? And you see that a lot when it comes down to why children are being taken, some of the causes of separation. Like, of course, we're not talking about the causes of separation when it comes down to abuse, right? But oftentimes, families are left broken, and I can attest to that. When people try to say that, yes, reunification is a great thing, right? I'm absolutely grateful for having my children back home. I bust my behind to get my children back home. But a lot of times, what people don't see is after that reunification, like, what does that healing process look like for your family? It's years later and I'm still dealing with the internals effects of separation, right? I'm still dealing with some of my children's behaviors and fears and nightmares, quite frankly, of what happened to them while they was in care. So I do want to ground us to say, one, we cannot look at reunification without looking at the harms that was caused due to family separation, but also like our ability not to give people space to grieve that loss that comes along. So that's why I was like, you know, talking to Prudence and some other folks, like, how I kind of approach unification and reunification. And I do believe that we have to develop a way forward, one, and how to do that right, which we're going to be talking about on some of our other slides. But I want to bring to your attention some of the things that other parents across this nation is fighting for right now, right? And I gotta kind of hold up the contrast and explain to you guys kind of like why there's this outcry to, call this Stolen Children's Month, right? Once again, we're looking at one thing without looking at the harms and how families are actually feeling when it comes down to your children being removed. We see this when it comes down to, ICE and all of these different things that we can have these internal outrages at. But oftentimes families, myself included, feel like that your child was stolen, right? Like you have story after story of children being removed while in the middle of breastfeeding, while at a hospital, those type of things. So we're not going to acknowledge today as, Unification Month without also acknowledging how families feel when it comes down to having their children removed. I want to kind of um, I often talk about, we have Adoption Month here that's like celebrated. And anytime like I went into court for families and things like that, especially when it came down to like the adoption celebration, I was always heartbroken, right? Going back to what I said on the last slide, as far as not having space and room for grief, right? We celebrate adoptions in the same space that we're taking someone's child. In one room, a parent can be losing their rights. A child can be like being removed actively, ripped out of that parent's hand. And in the very next courtroom, in that same space, it's like this celebration and like you see people and families come in with balloons and t-shirts and like everyone's excited, but on the other side of that you see parents crying, you see the heartbreak, you see we as a system or parts of the system not giving space and not giving that humanity, right? Some of those things are inhumane that we can actually just figure out, once again, that way forward and how do we change those things. And for us at Philly Voice, we believe that both things hold true, right? You cannot celebrate one without recognizing the harms, and you cannot recognize the harms without trying to figure out what solutions can be put in place. So I definitely wanted to, lift up Stolen Children's Month. They have an entire proclamation that's going on right now. They're having separation visuals throughout the country, right? And these are the things that I want us to kind of keep in mind as we move forward through this presentation. I'm not saying, please know that I know some of the people who have founded this month and who have like worked really, really hard to create this. I'm not taking that away. What I'm saying is that we can try to do this differently, right? Not upholding the system in a way that, hey, you jumped through all of these hoops. You took this housing class that didn't end in housing. You took this financial class even though you was poor, like you did all of these things and look, you got your child back. The system worked, right? The system did not work in that aspect. Recognize the harms that come along with that. But once again, like celebrating it in a different way. One of the things that we looked at, Yolanda and I, in collaboration with our community, as we was building Philly Voice, right? Philly Voice is built from the ground up by impacted folks. We don't do anything, not one project, not one program, without the community leading it. And those was the way that we figured out, like, okay, how can we move forward as a people? How can we move forward as an organization? And like, what is our way forward, right? And these are some of the things that we just look at on a normal basis, right? And highlight how strong parents are, right? How I'm not going to overkill the word resilient, right? But people are resilient. Like you survived this. My hats always kind of go off for people who have triumphed through their tragedy, right? I'm not neglecting the fact or negating the fact that you have had this tragedy in your life. I'm applauding you for being able to survive it. Right. And going back to that last slide, this is how families are feeling, right? This is how parents are feeling. Like I felt like my child got stolen, my child got kidnapped. I have them back, and you're going to celebrate me in the lens of I, maneuvered through the system. No, I was a soldier throughout that point. Right. Like I worked hard to get there. So looking at how we celebrate unification and highlighting how strong the family is and uplifting that individual family, not the system, right? Not saying, hey, this case manager made these phone calls and gave this family resources, and this is why this is successful, right? No, it's a human element. Like they were able to kind of maneuver through and get this back most of the time through their own grit, right? Like not necessarily just making the phone calls to resources, but who are you walking with families, you're walking with them versus I'm just making a phone call as that, individual case manager and things like that. And never downplaying the harms that family actually go through. Like I said, two things can hold true, right? Yes, I am ecstatic and I successfully got my children back. But at the same time, I am angry. I am hurt. My family is angry. My family is hurt. I'm trying to heal. My children is trying to heal and to not shy away from that. Oftentimes, we believe in some of the work that we do, which we will speak about later in the presentation, especially when it comes down to the healing aspect, right? We want to look at the immediate now and not necessarily look at what harms was caused and how can we heal through those harms. And being able to heal through those harms is being able to invest in those non-punitive supports, invest in building our village. One of our dreams was to, build our village up to a point to where we don't have to call on child welfare, family policing agencies, right? You don't have to necessarily call on that case manager to get that resource. We don't have to, lean on those things that might end up leading to more punitive measures or being surveilled further. We can kind of figure out how to call on ourselves. So we're going to kind of walk you through part of the process of how we created that.
So the first thing we have to do whenever working in a community is understand the family as a whole. Many times when we come into the child welfare realm, we're always looking at the families as separate, children versus parents. However, when we come to unification, keeping families together, we understand that the family is a thriving unit together and understanding that these struggles and that these people have struggles and needs. Just because they are reunified in court does not mean that their needs are not met, still are all met. So we believe that when we work with families in the community, we first ask them what they need, understanding that they know their needs more than anyone else, and go from there. And we use community access to different access without punitive measures that's associated with them and offer them the services they need. If someone says, okay, my children are home, but they don't have the things that they need, we find out exactly what they need and make the necessary referrals. And if we can't make those referrals, we actually obtain those items for ourselves to make sure that they understand that they have someone to support them, that they're not on their own, and that we're not looking at them as parent versus child. We're looking at them as a family unit. And I think that's essential in any work that we do. The community knows what the community needs, so we have to let them lead for what each individual family needs within their own unit. So when we think about community, we have to first ask, what does the community mean to us? Well, first thing we do in our organization is we remove titles. That's the most important thing. The community cannot come to you asking for help if they think your title is going to impact them negatively. So the first thing we have to do is have a relationship within our communities. In addition, in our meetings, we actually make sure anytime we have a meeting or invite community members to any event, we break bread. We find that people are more comfortable when they're sitting down with you at a table and communicating over a home cooked meal. We do not order food, we actually cook all our meals. We offer tangible supports. People, when they come out and they're asking for help, or even if they want to be involved, they want to know what they can do, what can they offer, what services do you have? So we offer those tangible supports. And when those supports, we make sure they're unbiased. We do not judge. We meet a family where they are and we help them through to grow to where they want to be. We remove our biases and our thought processes of where we believe they should be, understanding they know what's best for themselves and their family.
And a big part of that piece, especially the tangible supports, the breaking bread, and the removing of titles, oftentimes what we see in communities, including ours, I've sat in a whole lot of different places, community participatory research, and like all of these different things. You see people from the outside kind of come in to our community, and it end up being very extractive, right? You're taking from me, you're taking my information, you're like taking these things to gather for your research or for whatever program it is that you're trying to do. One of the things that, we do is like, oh, absolutely not. I'm big on not going into any community without being able to give back to that community, without being able to offer some type of resources, without being able to break bread. Yolanda always laugh at me because, I'm the person that's going to sit there and cook for hours to make sure everybody get a meal, and I'm going to overcook. Then I'm going to tell people to take platters home to feed their family, right? Like to have that kind of like the cookout type mentality, you see where communities see that you're invested, not just I'm about to pull all of this information from you. No, I am you. You are me, right? So by removing those titles in every room, it was so funny. Like, it's some members that just found out that Yolanda is an attorney. Like, they're like, "What? You're what?" Right? And we have shared a space in each other's home. Have eaten, have developed programs, and are just finding out some of the work that we do. And it's like, what? And it's not that these things are being hidden or unkept. It's a way to keep understand and put everyone is on the same level. When you walk into a space, you are a community member. I don't care how much you have, how little you have, what your title is. There's no big I's or little U's. I don't care about your degrees. I don't care about none of that. Right? You're part of this community, and we're going to sit and break bread, eat, and talk and say, how can we service our community together? So I just really wanted to like highlight that part. I think it's always funny when we discover each other's professional backgrounds. And they're like, hold on, I didn't know you did this. Right. And it shows how much intentionality we really put into that space. And part of that, led us to that co-creation process. I do need to give a shout out to the ABA, Nasha Justice, and the Stock Group, who actually helped to create this definition of co-creation. In the moment, like I saw the definition, you can live some things before you figure out how to put words to it, right? Like co-creation is designed and in partnership with those who are in systems, use systems, impacted by the system, and harmed by the system. And it demands intentionality, right? When I saw that, once again, we're like living that. Some of these pictures that you guys are seeing is from some of our retreats, some of our community events, some things that we went and did in other states. As you see, my kitchen table full of food. But in order to like really create these co-creation type spaces, and what we wanted to do was create that co-creation organization, right? We asked ourselves a question: what would it look like if the community had its own nonprofit? Right. And that was our basis of our first question. And in my mind, I had a lot of different things, right? I'm like, it's going to be a parent org. I'm going to, a parent coalition, and we're going to fight this and we're going to fight that. But when you have that type of democratic process with so many brilliant, impacted people in one room, it kind of morphs, right? But that's with that intentionality and taking the time to really create something versus, as we all know, as a person with lived experience of, cross systems and working in a lot of different offices, a lot of times you will have something already created, and then they come to you and say, hey, what is your thought process on this piece or on this part? Or let me take, give us some notes on this document or this program, without coming to you and saying, hey, let's start at the very beginning. how do we create this program? What does that program look like? So that was one of the things that like we just started in on. Sorry,
So in order
Yolanda.
to So in order to do that, what we did when we had our first family, we first had our first meeting when we had community retreats in which we offered community members to come out and have a retreat and figure out how they wanted their organization to be designed and what they wanted to focus on. The first thing we did is we asked the question, what is missing in the community? Understanding that what we thought is not what the community thought, letting them design their program and come up with a mission and a vision for an organization that they wanted to see here in Philadelphia. And what I wanted you guys to hear is what mission statement they came up with. This has all come from the community. As you see, we started out with bullet points, what everyone wanted, and what we came down to. And our mission at the Philly Voice is to prevent family separation, provide services to support stabilization for Philadelphians experiencing poverty by creating a community-based coalition, fostering self-sustaining programs, and delivering essential services to individuals and families in need. That's what the family wanted. So basically, there's more systems involved, and the family wanted their goal was to fight the systems, but also when we come together, when we're dealing with child welfare, they wanted to figure out how to be self-sustaining. So therefore, it's essential that we help them with the resources necessary that they're asking for within their communities. We're removing all the gatekeeping things. There's so many communities out here and nonprofits out here that are kept from the community that are there to support them. So our goals as a whole was to offer those services and get those individuals to be self-sustaining. And once a person comes through, their goal is to continue to move on with that mission and help others. A lot of people that we come together have been through various systems, child welfare systems, incarceration, and so on. And they actually have made it through. So we believe that it's essential as a village to help hold the hand of another and help them through.
And I do want to point out that, like that unification, right? And when we talked about unification, and in our minds and within our group, it wasn't just, you know, the family. It was the community. It was like removing some of those silos, partnerships. Now we know that Yolanda and I, or even our org, can't tackle, you know, all the issues with housing and like all the different issues with certain like access to treatment issues and certain resources in the community and things like that. And that's where us removing those silos and putting in spaces other nonprofits, other leaders, other organizations, and saying like, how can we do this, or how can we internally start a referral process? How can you help? And I gotta highlight one of the things that we say at the end of all our meetings. It's like, okay, now how can we help you? What can we do to better your life? What can we do to service you? And it was like really interesting of the things that was coming out as we developed and built and like got to these consensus, right? And so, okay, well, what does the community need? One of those things was like tangible resources. Okay, what does tangible resources mean to you? Right? And we see some of these things. You can take a look at this list. Some of these things actually keep children in care longer, families separated longer, and not having, um, you know, the proper bedding, not having the necessarily, you know, full cabinet or exterminators, right? Like free exterminators. I've seen children be removed in Philadelphia plenty due to an infestation issue of bed bugs, roaches, fleas, and things like that. These are concrete things that we can offer, right? And it might not be something that just me and Yolanda can offer, right? So we're gonna talk a little bit more about that. Like, how do we like look at our ecosystem? How can we collectively like bring in some of those resources? And even though we wasn't, at the time like officially launched, this is still, part of what we do. Those pictures and stuff that you guys are seeing, this is literally my living room, my dining room. We was able to work with a hotel that was just redoing like their entire hotel. So they gave TVs and lamps and things like that. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna give them out to the community. And people is like showing up, getting a free TV, getting a lamp, or getting whatever it was that we was able to give. And a lot of people are like, how much? Nothing, right? Pass it back, right? Help somebody else when you get it. We can, oftentimes we think on a macro level that we can only service the community in a really huge way, right? Or we need like a vast of, a vast amount of money in order to get things done. And I think both Yolanda and I can attest to we don't have no money, but we still getting things done, right? It's still things that we can, make calls for, right? Post up on Facebook, like, hey, I need some toiletries to make some care kits. And you'd be surprised how many people in the community are looking for opportunities to get involved in that type of way and say, okay, I'll bring some socks, right? I'll bring this, I'll bring that. And then we can actually sit down and say, okay, how can we service the community?
And then many times we actually had where not only people bring back tangible assets, but certain people needed emotional assets, which is like when you see in our tangible list, they said hairstylists and barbers. We actually had community members at a shelter come out to a shelter and provide hairstyle service, barber service at free of cost. And that actually lifted up those in the community that actually needed it, because in order to move forward and do better, you got to feel better. You look better to feel better. And one of the things we always say is don't forget our men, because many times when you're looking at communities, you see so many women involved. Our men are the ones that actually turn out to support and help other men. So it's important that we involve our men. The community was asking that fathers be role models. If we're going to try to change the system, we have to and build the community. We have to provide the supports necessary for fathers. And child welfare, we know that they're always supporting the women in the situation. And what we decided is we're not going to just focus on women. We're going to focus on the whole community as a whole, the whole family. And it's important that we understand that both men, women, and children all need support. And that's what our goal is, to support all of those individuals.
Yeah, and it kind of goes to, when we think of men, oftentimes even within especially within family regulation, child welfare, oftentimes they have to be ready, willing, and able is the word, right? They have to be prepared. And even in society, we look at men like they should just have it all together. Right. There's no real resources. But as we was like doing what should fathers need, it was two things that kind of stuck out. For me is one of our dads who we ended up spotlighting is like, I need a one-stop shop. Right? For mental health, I want to be able to go and like get domestic violence support had came up because there are men that are abused. Also, it's like I got daughters. What do I do if they're on their, menstrual cycle? I don't know what to do with these girls, right? We should have one place that we can go to and get a mentor and get these different things and connect. And also one of the things we was looking at is like there's no father baby programs in our city. There's nowhere where a single man with his children can go into a shelter, can go into a like dad and baby program. We don't have those. We don't even look at our men in that type of way when they need resources. If you're not all together or ready, willing, and able, then you're kind of left in the back burner. So I wanted to highlight that because that's one of the things that we like actively advocate for in some of our housing spaces and things like that. We're on like different groups and different community advisory boards that's working within the housing realm to figure out how can we figure out how to service fathers with children. Going back to, as we did all of that, which we're still doing, we had to ask ourselves, what are our collective assets? What, who's in our ecosystem? Who can help with what? Like, what resources do we have amongst ourselves? Once again, not dependent on necessarily like leaning onto, punitive systems, leaning into, punitive programs because we all have those. I think that's not just a Philly thing, that's a nationwide thing, right? So, what resources do we have amongst ourselves, right? Can we collect those goods? Can we, figure out how to connect with a furniture bank? Like, can we service each other? One of the things that came out as we were like thinking about our collective like resources and things like that is like so much of what our community don't know. Okay, let's put together some community law clinics. That's in a different way. They might just offer one legal advice free of cost, right? Access and knowledge to what's going on. But at the same time, we're having our community law clinics. We once again are serving food. We're also giving away bus passes. We're also helping people connect to treatment, not looking at things in such a narrow point of view, but really thinking about those nuances that go on within families and within our communities and kind of tackling on like all of that almost at once, right? What skill sets do you bring to the community? And I was always surprised. And, what is your personal mission? A lot of times when we think about skill sets and when we think about, what you bring to the table, a lot of people automatically goes to the educational piece, right? Well, I'm an attorney or I'm a social worker or I'm this, I'm that. And we had to like really break that down. Like, no, what do you like? What is your mission? Like for me, I love to feed the people. So one of my assets, that I bring to the table, I have the ability to cook. I'm creative. I can make shirts. I can do A, B, and C, right? And we have other members that's like, hey, listen, I don't do much, but I can go pick up some people, right? Like really figuring out like your own personal mission and your own personal niche. One of the things that I absolutely love, like as we were like building this out, at the same time, we had every member have a notebook, have a pen, write down what you're learning. Because as we're building this nonprofit, we want you to think about building your own nonprofit. We want you to think about building your own LLC. We want to, connect you to A, B, and C. And going back to some of those, resources that we have amongst ourselves and that tangible support list. One of the things that came up was childcare and a lack of childcare, right? Especially for families that's not connected to systems. It's hard to get childcare, it's extremely expensive. And we have members that own daycares, right? Like so we're going to offer this set amount of spaces to your members. So where we can help out in this area. We have one, like I need help with scholarships, right? I don't know how to do this. I have never been here. I'm the first in my family. Okay, so let's connect you with some other members that have been to college, that have been through that process, that can mentor you and help you through that process. So that's what we mean by our collective resources and what skills we can bring. And it's almost never just a professional skill. So it's just something to think about, you guys, as you try to move forward to, like, if you're doing anything within the community, right? To really think about who's in your ecosystem, who's missing in that ecosystem, and what do y'all have amongst yourselves. If you never get a dollar, if you never get a resource, what can you actually do amongst yourselves? Ooh, now I messed up. Now y'all gotta forgive me. I'm not the tech person. I don't know how to go back. I think it's like an arrow or something. Yay! I figured it out. So going back to like our spotlight, this man has been a part of Philly Voice since while we was the community coalition, like long before, right? And he was one of those people who's like, "Hey, I just got my daughter's back. I need to figure A, B, and C out." And as we went through and we started to create, we said we want to highlight these things. A lot of times our community is not highlighted in a way that speaks truth to power, right? You think you got to have this huge amount of success in order to highlight or to say, listen, this is a phenomenal young man. This is a phenomenal young woman. So one of the things we do is community spotlights, right? And ask our community, what do you need development in, and figure out how to develop those leaders. And one of the things that came out of, building and sitting there trying to create different programs was our mentorship program. Once again, how can we reach back and teach someone else? Through our mentorship program, which we will be officially launching this fall. I'm so excited. We're doing it on a smaller scale now, but we officially will be launching this fall. Is called Family Aligned Mentorship, right? And for us, our hopes, Yolanda and I talk about that a lot, is that we work ourselves out of a job. I know that sounds crazy, but part of FAM is developing a trainer model, but for families, right? So if I help this family through and teach this family through along the way, and that family helps another family, and we can like create that generational healing the same way we have generational harms, right? Like we can have people in our community with that knowledge. There's not, we often think, at least I've had that experience, April, you're a unicorn, right? Like, oh, you're different. Or you get people that are like, oh, you're a triclet. Like, I ain't going to curse, but whatever, right? Like you get those type of things when if you actually sit down and really be a part of a community, you see there's so many brilliant people that's not highlighted. You see so many brilliant people that have the same capacity that we have if only we give them the chance, especially in our communities that's mostly disinvested in. So yeah, look out for our fan program. I'm so excited. So we got our mentors going out, but also, once again, I told you guys multiple things can hold true, and part of that is having those spaces to speak, having those spaces to heal, having those spaces to collectively share trauma sometimes, to overcome some of that trauma, to lean on. For me, it was other women in the community and some people in my circle that when I got my daughter back, I got all my children back, but when I got my daughter back, well, she was traumatized and she was off the chain and she was emotional and she was angry and she had a lot of different things going on with her. And I'm trying to heal as an individual while my children are trying to heal that as individuals, and I'm struggling, right? You don't have nowhere to necessarily go to. I didn't have, um, and still don't, right? Sometimes if your child is not connected to the system, they can't even get proper therapy. They can't get trauma stuff. They can't, like certain things that we no longer have access to as a community because you must be connected to a system. You must be a number. You must be a piece of paper. You must have a judge in order to actually be in a therapeutic space or a healing space. So one of the things for me, it was women that I kind of took my daughter and like, April, get a break. Right? Yolanda has taken my daughter plenty. Like, and I was shocked when she first, long before we started this, took my daughter one day and I'm calling her every 5 minutes. Like, is she okay? Is she getting on your nerves? Do you need me to come get her? She's like, I'm used to kids, April. Go about your business, right? Get a break, get some rest, right? And we have to create those type of spaces. But one of the things, this poem is from one of our um, mothers who have lost all of her children due to termination. But to be in those spaces, and we wanted to spotlight her, and it's just something about this poem, right? And I'm not going to read it to you. We can share this out, but this one piece, right? Um, she talked about how she like developed her child as like a jewel, her children as a jewel, and now I'm forced to watch it against around someone else's neck, see you contour to someone else's wrist, right? It's not spaces where you can go to and say this hurts, right? Because this is it's not necessarily looked at, right? It's disenfranchised grief is not recognized. Right. I know the feeling of walking past my daughter's school, seeing her in the schoolyard, heartbreaking to tears, and never being able to walk up to that gate, knowing that I couldn't take her out of that school, knowing I couldn't walk away from her, watching your children from a distance. Your children can be a mile away from you, right? And never making that connection. And those are the things that we don't necessarily give space for, but one of the things that we wanted to do, especially when it came down to like healing spaces and healing circles, like we have to kind of address that. We have to be like, oh, it's okay to feel those emotions. It's okay to miss your children. It's okay to process some of that guilt and shame and everything else that might come along with that process. If we don't intentionally make space to allow people to heal and grow throughout that part, then we're just going to, perpetuate the same thing. You're wondering why people are angry or feel like they don't have any support. We're going in circles because we, especially within our community, within, the Black community, is something that we look at. A lot of times it was taboo to seek therapy. It was taboo to kind of get help in different areas because you don't want people to know that your child was taken. You don't want people to know the struggles that's in and out that you go through. But creating those spaces is just so phenomenal to see when people start to get past some of those feelings and start to lighten up and connect to different things and build themselves as, activists and advocates and things like that. But I don't think any of that can happen if we don't give space to grieve.
Yeah, we're here with the ABA, and one of the things is a lot of lawyers we know would join this program. When we started out our mission for our parent coalition or a parent panel, we went with the lens of community lawyering, understanding that, yes, you may have a title, but that title is not what drives the story. It's important that you, as lawyers, if you're going to get involved in any type of community work, that you let the community members lead the fight. They know what they need in each community. We, as lawyers, sometimes have our own biases and we just want to get to the solutions and come up with the plan that we know is going to work right away. Whereas the community has lived through the issues and knows within their community what is needed. Every community has something different and it have a different need. Understanding that is important, that you are there to help. You are not there to, and you're there to help them through whatever areas they need their help. They know what they need help. You may go in with your own lens, but understanding your lens is clouded, jaded, and what they need, they know they need. Um, and it's also important that you make space. It's important that you make space for the families because we're so used to going in with doing our court stuff and our legal things that where we know like get to the facts, get to what you need. And what you might find out is what you think is relevant may not be relevant to the families. You need to take the time and invest the time to know the full stories of anyone that you're helping. By understanding their full stories, you'll actually know which way they're going and how they got to where they are. Like I said, you meet a person where they are, and that's essential as a lawyer because many times we are given a petition with facts, but we're missing a lot of information. And knowing the full story is actually what helps individuals feel whole, because they know that they're listened to, and someone is there willing to hear what they have to say and fight for them the way they need to. Even as within Philly Voice, we are a community-led organization. However, we're also helping individuals who are currently involved in the system. Having us as support, they're able to tell us their whole story. And because in areas where they're not feeling like they're being listened to by their lawyers, by being a lawyer that's part of a system, I'm able to communicate with other lawyers to help them understand what's missing, why the people are acting or saying what they're saying and what they need. Because many times you're trying to fulfill the goals that you believe is supposed to be happening within your court system, or checking the boxes and not really hearing what a family needs. I mean, there's many cases where we've heard that we're trying to sometimes there's cases where you're trying to um, get a certain outcome for a family when that's not the outcome that they need. You have to understand the families know what they need at that time. Stop limiting your lens to what you see and open up your eyes and have a broader vision to let them lead the case. Um, a lot of people within the families will tell you that you're there to do a job, but whereas they're there to live their life. Their job is over once the case is over. They still have to live through that. So it's important to make them feel whole through the process, understanding that their stories, letting them lead how they live through everything, is essential in their growth, in their healing. If you put your beliefs on them, that stagnates that growth of that family, and also limits sometimes their ability to succeed.
Stop thinking that attorneys have the solutions, right? You are part of a solution, um, not necessarily have all the solutions. And like in order to like really do that, I think you have to realize and recognize that you value that community, you value that input, right? And allow them to lead versus thinking, you are the one with the solution. A lot of times they have solutions, right? Which kind of take us into our next slide, Yolanda.
Right. And I always say the community does not need saving. They don't need us to save them. Many times lawyers think we're here to help, or people coming into the community or in the family policing system thinking we have to save this family. We don't have to save them. We need to provide them with the solutions, not even the solutions per se, but if they come to you and say, this is what I need, give them that resource. Stop gatekeeping. It shouldn't be in systems where we're like, well, your worker is going to provide you with this information. The reality is that information should be readily available for families to be able to seek it out on their own. Um, and we should be able to put forth resources ourselves that will allow them to save themselves. If I'm telling you, um, I don't get paid until next week, but I need to go shopping as a lawyer, you should not be saying, well, talk to your worker. You should say, here's the information to the food bank, and this is where you can go, and their hours are such and such. We have to stop using our energy to fight within the systems and help fight against some of these systems. Because many times growing up, the systems are stagnated, they're a box. And then many times we can't fit into a box. We have to understand communities have different things and different needs that does not fit into this systematic box that we're trying to put them in, and offer them the help that they need, which is why I said they don't need to be saved. We just need to be there to help and understand that we're here to help.
Mhm. And a big part of that is not um oftentimes in the law realm is, and I just say law realm in general, and this is coming from a non-attorney, um, is a monopoly on the information that the community has and are able to receive, right? And I think it's two parts to that. Part of that is arrogant type. I went to school for this. I must be paid for this knowledge. Which I get, make your money. But also it's a worthiness test when it comes down to what information, who gets what resource, right? And this is part of the reason why we say, like, just stop the gatekeeping. One of the hardest things for me throughout the years working in other professions and things like that was having the knowledge to save my community and not being able to use it, right? Having the ability to possibly save somebody from death and be like, oh, sorry, it's a conflict. I can't give you that information, right? Where something as simple as everyone deserves to know, everyone should have access to the same resources. Everyone should have access to high quality legal representation. Everybody should have access to, the same court processes or someone to fight for them in that type of way. And even if I don't have access to fight for them or they don't have access, give them the tools to fight for themselves. Right? I am the queen of that, and I'm learning more and more daily that I can't necessarily save everybody. Right? But what I can do is give them the information to save themselves, give them some of those tools to save themselves. And at the end, you're building them up as an individual person, right? As a family, because they themselves said what they need, they themselves saved them. It's not a charity thing, it's not a handout, it's everyone should have access to the same resources. And if they don't, we have to figure out how to move some of our saviorism energy, right? And create that for them. Be it a know your right slide, be it a community dialogue session. Like, how can we pump this information out? So even if you don't have a good attorney, or even if long before you get to court, which is what we're kind of, working on, long before you get to court, do you have the information that's necessary to stop you from getting there? Do you have the knowledge to tell someone, anyone that's at your door, no, this is not right? No, that is against the law, right? Like, no, I can do A, B, and C. So having that and figuring out those ways and really removing yourself um, from being a gatekeeper of knowledge is really big. But I know we have like 4 minutes, so we're going to blow through this last one. Oop, did I pass it?
So while April's
Oop,
pulling it back up, the last slide says steps you can take to become a better co-creator in the community.
don't pay me no attention. Y'all see the slides?
So the first thing we should do is take the steps to help and not save. What resources do you bring to the table? Go ahead, April.
Right. Recognize intention and purpose, right? How can you intentionally do the work that you do? How can you intentionally, you know, help that community? And what purpose are you doing it? And that's both checking yourself and the purpose of the community, the org, or wherever you're going, like, right? Check your own purpose, but also theirs.
Two, we always say give space for grief. When working with individuals, when in the child policing system, people are being removed. They're grieving. Every time they step in the courtroom, every time they talk to the lawyer, every time they have a visit, it's grief. You're basically re-traumatizing both the child and the parent whenever they're visiting and being torn apart. Give space for that grief. Allow someone to hurt and know that it's okay because this is a process that they're going through and it does hurt. So give space for that grief.
Mhm. And expect humanity in everything you do. Even going back to what Yolanda just said, as far as the grief piece, right? Oftentimes people are judged by the way that they react, whether or not they react angrily or, sadly, or like trauma responses and reactions are normal. And it's all a part of humanity, right? So expect the humanity in everything that you do. You won't be surprised when you see someone possibly lashing out. You'd be like, okay, I get it. That's part of humanity, right? Like we all have the capacity for good, bad, and indifferent. And if we expect that in any space that we go to, we're not surprised by how someone may react, and we're not going to be judgmental on how they react either.
And it's important when you're dealing with co-creation and community, trust the process. You will not get to the end the way you want it, but the end will eventually come. Just trust the process.
Absolutely. And as you're trying to figure out how to trust the process, have some humility, right? Understand that one, you don't know it all. One of the things that I struggled years ago with understanding humility, I said I can accept people right where they are, right? I can get down and accept them. But part of having humility is accepting yourself right where you're at as well. That you're neither good nor bad, you're just human. So recognize and have humility as you're going through that process, right? And saying, okay, I don't have all the answers. And if I did wrong someone or misspoke or anything like that in this space, then I will promptly apologize and move accordingly. And I guess I'll take the last one. Take time to seek opportunities to step back and step away, right? That's big for us. That's something I work on a lot. How can I step back and give someone else room to step up, right? How can I help to develop another leader, right? I'm not the one that people should call on all the time. How can I take the opportunity that was given to me or given to us and to give to somebody else and push them forward? But we're at time, family. So I'm gonna pass it over to Beverly. We did good.
Thank
We did good on time.
You did excellent. Thank you both for an excellent presentation, and more importantly, just the space to have the conversation. And I thank you both very much for being here. Thank you all of who have joined us. And let's take the time this month to really think about how our communities are co-creating to support the families that we all want to see strive and do better. So thank you both for being here.